What's up, you guys? It's Tyler from the Herrintons, and we're back today with a brand new video. So this right here is going to be a bit of an update video. So a little over 6 months ago, I made a video all about the Zhiyun crane and the Sony A6300. And when I made that video, I'd only had it for maybe a few weeks, and I absolutely loved the setup. And that video has been super popular on my channel. It is by far the most popular video on my channel to date. So what I wanted to do now is just give you a little bit of an update. I've had the camera for a much longer time now. I've been able to use it in a ton of different situations, and I feel like I have a little bit better understanding about what I like about the camera, what I don't like, the pros and cons, all that kind of stuff. So this is going to be a little bit of a stream of consciousness video. I'm just going to talk about the camera, and then about the gimbal, and then kind of about the combo together, what I've been liking, what I haven't been liking, all that stuff. So let's just jump right into it. We'll talk about the camera first. All right, so let's talk about the Sony A6300. So I got the A6300 and I was loving it, and a few weeks later, like literally like 3 weeks later, the A6500 came out. So that was a little unfortunate. The A6500 has the in-body image stabilization on the sensor, which is really awesome, and it also has a touch screen. So both of those things are things that I would definitely love to have on the A6300, but honestly, for my purposes, which is pretty much just a gimbal camera, I don't necessarily need those things, but they would be nice to have. So far with the camera, I want to address some of the major concerns I had with it right off the bat and how I've experienced them today. So the first thing that I was most concerned with about this camera was the rolling shutter. I can say that I haven't had really any issues with that. Like, I know technically it's a thing, but just the way that I shoot, rolling shutter isn't really a problem for me. And the second big issue that I was kind of nervous about with this camera when I first picked it up was overheating. Now I will say, at the wedding we just shot last weekend, which was, the end of May, it was very hot. I did, for the first time ever, get like an overheating warning on the 6300 after shooting with it outside in 4K for, maybe 30 minutes straight, starting, stopping, and different clips in 4K, which isn't great, but which is really interesting is they actually just came out with a software update yesterday, a firmware update, which is supposed to make it so that the 6300 can run for longer once it starts getting heated up, and I've heard that that has given really great results in allowing you to shoot for longer in 4K. So that hasn't been too big of a problem for me so far. So let's talk about image quality. So when I made the review for the 6300, I said the image quality is amazing. It is sharper than the A7S II, the A7R II, and all that stuff. And that is still true. But there's one caveat that I need to really emphasize here, and that is only in 4K, right? The 4K quality of this camera is amazing. If you're shooting in 4K, it looks great. The 1080p, not so much, right? So I'll be showing some footage throughout the entirety of this video, but I just ran some tests recently, and the difference between the 1080p footage and the 4K footage is kind of night and day, right? Which is sort of unfortunate because I really bought this camera because I wanted to use 60 frames per second at 1080, which you still can, and it still looks good, and the slow-mo is cool and all that kind of stuff. But if you really care about sharpness and detail and all those great things that you can get out of this camera, you really have to shoot it in 4K. There's just a really big jump in sharpness and image quality when you go from 1080 to 4K. So it just depends on if you can live with that or not. Again, I'll show you some side-by-side comparisons, but again, it just comes down to your personal preference, what your other cameras are that you're matching it to. So the camera that I primarily shoot with is this one right here. It is the Canon C100, and it is a great camera, and it is very sharp. It has a 4K sensor that's being down sampled to 1080p, so it produces a very sharp image. So when I take the very sharp C100 footage and I put it next to the 1080p 6300 footage, I can tell a difference, right? My brides probably can't tell a difference. Most people probably can't. Other filmmakers and myself, you can definitely tell a difference. But when you go from the 4K of the 6300 to the C100 1080p footage, they look very comparable. So scaling it down definitely makes a huge difference. All right, so next let's talk about picture profile. So I have been doing a ton of experimenting when it comes to picture profiles. When I first made my original video, I was using PP3, and I thought that was great, and I really did like that. I started using S-Log solely for a while just because I really wanted the extra dynamic range. I've kind of been all over the place, but just this past week, I actually did a bunch of really, not scientific, but lots of very head-to-head comparisons, and what I actually found is that the profile that I like the most is what is actually called matte flat. So Matt Johnson is an awesome YouTuber and wedding filmmaker based out of Texas, and he has an entire video about what he calls his matte flat profile, which basically is you take the S-Log3 profile and you change the gamma to Cine 4, and that's pretty much all you have to do. And I found that this gives you the best profile because it still allows you to shoot up down to 200 ISO, which is really, really nice. It gives you good dynamic range. It's flat enough that you can kind of grade it and push it around a little bit in post, but it just also gives really good image quality. So if you're gonna shoot this camera, I really highly suggest doing that. I'm gonna link to his video in the description below where he goes over exactly how to change that. But that's what I have found. Again, I have shot some stuff in S-Log3, as you can see on the screen, and it can look good, but for weddings, I just don't find it very practical. It's just really hard to get your exposure right because you have to overexpose, which is really kind of goes against what I want to do on a wedding day. On a wedding day, my goal is always to get it like as perfect as I can in camera. So trying to overexpose it kind of goes against the way that I've always thought about exposure on a wedding day. So I didn't really love the S-Log, and if you underexpose it, it can look really, really bad, which is really frustrating to me. So let's talk about battery life. So I own 3 batteries for this camera, and I've never been in a situation where all of the batteries have died. On a wedding day, I've also never run through all 3. This past wedding, I actually shot 90% of the day in 4K, and I still was fine. It's always a good idea that when you take a battery out to put it on the charger and always kind of have one on the charger. But I'm pretty sure, in that wedding, I shot the entire thing in 4K. I probably went through 3 total batteries in the whole day. So really not that bad. Really can't complain. Is it great? No. Is it fine? Yes. I did find, so one time I shot my friend Caitlin. She had a workshop and I filmed that entire thing. I was filming the entire thing in 4K, but I was using the Metabones adapter for my Canon lenses because I was shooting the whole thing on my monopod. I wasn't always on the gimbal. And I did find on that day that it drained through the batteries a lot faster. So if you plan on buying this and using the Metabones adapter, just know that that is using power from the camera, so it will make your batteries drain a lot faster. I do leave the camera in airplane mode at all times, just because that helps cut down on extra battery usage. But yeah, all in all, is it great? No. Buy 3 or 4 batteries for it. You can get them pretty cheap on Amazon, and that shouldn't be a big problem for you. So yeah, all in all, I've been very, very happy with the A6300. Again, once you kind of find those right settings, you can really get it dialed in, and it works really, really well. I shoot this thing all the way up to about 4,000 ISO is about where I like to push it, and it still looks really, really good. You can probably push it up to 8 if you're properly exposed and you're in the right picture profile. I have found some issues again with the S-Log3. If you're not exposing that properly, it looks really bad. It'll fall apart really, really fast, so you have to be really careful with that. But yeah, all in all, the quality of this camera has been great. The 1080p is a little bit disappointing. I wish it was better, but the 4K looks so good that it kind of makes up for it. Again, the 6500 is out now, so if you're watching this, I would highly suggest that you pick up that one. I think personally that it's worth the extra couple $100 to get that for the in-body image stabilization, and the touchscreen autofocus would be really nice to have. But all in all, super happy with the 6300. All the problems that I was afraid of, I haven't really had to deal with, so that is awesome. All right, so next let's talk about the Zhiyun crane. So the crane has been amazing. I'm literally so blown away by this little piece of technology. It is so, so, so great. I'll tell literally everybody about it that will listen. I think it's amazing. So it comes with 2 sets of batteries. Only one time now I've actually had the batteries die, and I didn't even really know what would happen when they died because I've had it for so long and they've never died. But wedding we shot 2 weekends ago, the one set of batteries finally did die just because I didn't charge it the night before. And basically what would happen, like they would turn on and everything was fine, but if I would go to touch the dial or touch the screen and it would put resistance on the motors, it would just kind of like flop. And that was how I knew the batteries had died. But I mean, I don't know how many hours I was shooting on it before that happened. So the battery life is really, really great. This thing is just rock solid. The inverted mode is super, super easy. It's just so easy to use. It's so fun to use. It's so light. Like I literally love everything about it. The thing that I was questioning in my original video was about the durability. I haven't had any problems as far as durability goes. The one thing I may be able to complain about, if I had to pick one thing, is that the screws that you screw down to tighten the different axes where you do your adjustments to balance it, sometimes they don't really have anything to grab onto or lock into. So sometimes they kind of can come loose, or they can kind of be kind of finicky. But other than that, man, I mean, it is seriously, like, you can't get a better gimbal, I don't think, for the money. I do wish, it could hold a heavier camera. It'd be really nice to be able to put like a 5D Mark III or 5D Mark IV or something like that on there, or maybe a little bit heavier of a lens. But for the value and the price and all that kind of stuff, you really can't beat it. And since my original video came out, the version 2 of this crane has come out. From what I understand, it's pretty much the same thing. The motors are the same. There's just a few minor differences. The handle's a little bit shorter. They've changed the button placement a little bit. They've made the sled, redesigned it a little bit so that it has a built-in quick release plate. Little minor changes. If you have the version 1 already, I don't think you need to go buy the version 2. If you're buying it for the first time, sure, go buy the version 2. They got some bigger, thicker batteries that, should last longer, but they already last really long as it is. So yeah, all in all, Zhiyun crane, absolutely love it. I recommend it to everybody who's using a smaller camera like this. And then lastly, I kind of just want to talk about the whole combo, these two things working together, and specifically how I use it on a wedding day and how that has been going. I mentioned some of these things a little bit, but it's been absolutely great. I love it. Once again, figuring out the picture profile thing is really, really important. Once I kind of figured that out, it's been great. As far as matching it to my Canon footage, it's definitely takes a little bit of work in post. I'm not going to say that it's like flawless and it matches perfectly every single time, but I think I can get it close enough that most people can't tell the difference and it looks really good. So this last wedding I used it, I shot the entire day in 4K, minus a few little clips of the bride and groom where I switched it into 60 frames per second, and then a few dancing shots at the end. But I've been reviewing that footage back, and it looks super, super, super good. So the key is to make sure that you're exposing everything properly. What I like to do is I set my zebras to 100 plus, and then that way I basically just turn my exposure, adjust it so that if something important like the dress or anything that I want to retain that detail, I just move it until I see the zebras, and then I dial it back just a tiny bit until the zebras go away, and that's how I know that I'm well exposed. It is kind of difficult if you're shooting in 4K. It dims the screen very significantly. It does make it a little bit difficult to see on a sunny day. It's hard to see the screen. I think it's fine. Again, it's such a wide shot that I can usually get it pretty close. Shooting in 4K, I can always kind of crop and reframe if I really have to. Does it stink? Kinda, yeah, but at least they do that so you don't get overheating and stuff like that. The autofocus on this thing works so well. This lens is not a nice lens. It's not an expensive lens, but the autofocus works flawlessly. Like, very, very rarely do I ever have it miss focus. It's almost always focusing on exactly what I want it to, especially again outside. I mean, the minimum aperture on this is 2.8, which isn't super shallow, but it always gets exactly what I want, especially if I'm just filming the bride and groom and the face detect can grab onto them. It's locked on. It's super solid. Yeah, I mean, the only downside to this thing is that it looks kind of funny. I think, I have my big, heavy C100, which, looks nice and legit. And then I have this little teeny tiny little camera on this little teeny tiny gimbal. And I think that people don't necessarily take it seriously. They kind of not laugh at it, but it just doesn't look professional. But once I see the footage that comes out of it and I see the shots that I'm able to get, that all goes out the window. They could really care less. So yeah, as long as you're shooting this thing in 4K, quality is amazing. You can shoot it in 1080 and it still looks good. You just got to make sure you really nail that exposure, and you just need to know you're not going to have as much detail and as much sharpness and stuff like that. But yeah, one set of batteries lasts me through the entire wedding day. I do bring the tripod and I set it up kind of like this. I set it up next to the dance floor so that I can kind of go grab it whenever I need it. But yeah, it just kind of sits there the entire night, and I've only had the batteries die on me the one time. I can get shots with this that I could never get with anything else. Super light, super easy. My shoulders absolutely love it. I can use it on the dance floor the entire night and just have so much fun, and I'm moving around and doing all stuff, and my shoulders never get tired. I could literally probably film for 20 minutes straight without having to put it down. I'd have nothing but good things to say about this. Yeah, there were certain points over the last couple months where I was getting frustrated because I couldn't get the quality that I wanted and all that kind of stuff. But I think, again, once you get to really know the camera, I think shooting 4K, shooting in the matte flat profile, and making sure everything is well exposed, if you can get all those three things, the quality is amazing. There are some situations where I had less than ideal quality, and that was kind of frustrating, but that was more user error than anything else. So it's everything that I could ever want in a gimbal for weddings, right? Just the quickness, the speed, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's where I am now. I continue to plan on using this thing. We're still kind of deciding what we want to do with our main cameras. Right now we're shooting with the C100 and the 5D Mark III as like our two main cameras. Probably going to get a C100 Mark II. So then we'll have two C100s, and this, again, the image quality still holds up against all of that. So that's it, guys. That is my update for you guys on the A6300 and the Zhiyun crane. Hopefully this video is not too long, but I just have so much good things to say about it. That's it. Hope you guys enjoy this. Thank you guys so much for checking it out. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please go ahead and leave a like. I would really appreciate that. You guys are freaking troopers for that. So until the next time, this has been Tyler from the Herrintons, and I'll catch you in the next one.